The council chamber was designed for beings who believed they understood control. It floated in the vacuum between three empires, a perfect sphere of polished crystal and living metal, its walls shimmering with controlled starlight. Every inch of it radiated order, precision, superiority. Nothing chaotic was allowed inside. Until she entered. The doors did not open with sound. They parted like reality itself was making space, and every conversation, every calculation, every quiet negotiation, died instantly. Queen Valera stepped forward. She did not announce herself. She did not need to. Her presence alone bent attention. For 2 centuries, she had ruled systems that once tore themselves apart in endless war. Entire civilizations owed their survival to her decisions. Her name alone had stopped fleets mid-flight. She was not just a ruler. She was stability given form. But today, something was wrong. Her skin, normally radiant with deep flowing patterns of blue and silver, flickered unevenly. The light within her form, something every species in the galaxy had come to recognize as a symbol of control, was unstable, fading, breaking. Even the oldest beings in the chamber felt it immediately. This was not how a queen looked. This was how something looked when it was about to collapse. No one spoke. Not the war generals. Not the diplomats. Not the machine consciousness observing from 1,000 distant nodes. They all waited. Because whatever had broken her had to be worse than war. She stopped at the center of the chamber. For a moment, she said nothing. And in that silence, something unbearable spread across the room, not fear of death, not fear of defeat, but something far more dangerous. Helplessness. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. Too quiet. My daughter is gone. It didn't echo. It didn't need to. Every translation system in the chamber carried the meaning perfectly into every mind present. And still, no one moved. Because they all knew. They had all read the reports. They had all seen the last transmission. Princess Lisa, heir to the Zephyrian systems, symbol of the next era of peace, vanished 37 standard cycles ago. Her ship had entered the outer edge of the Crimson Nebula for diplomatic passage. A routine mission. An escorted route. Safe. Until it wasn't. A distress signal had been received. Fragmented. Incomplete. Then silence. Total. Absolute. Gone. Queen Valara's form dimmed further as she continued. I have been told, she said, her voice tightening just enough to betray what she was holding back, that every possible measure has been taken. Now there was movement. Subtle. Uncomfortable. Because this part was worse. Admiral Vex stepped forward first, his armored form towering, his species known for conquest and certainty. Neither of those helped him now. Your Majesty, he said carefully, our fleets have scanned every system within operational range. We have deployed deep-range probes, quantum sweeps, and gravitational echo mapping. He paused. Just long enough. There is no trace. The words felt wrong the moment they left him. Not incorrect. Just useless. Another voice joined. Ambassador Krill, representing a species whose minds could reach across space itself. We extended our telepathic networks into the nebula's edge, she said. We searched for consciousness signatures. Memory echoes. Anything. Her mandibles twitched. There was nothing. That was worse. Technology failing was one thing. But minds not finding anything, that meant absence. Finality. Or something that erased both. The chamber grew colder. Not physically. Something deeper. Queen Valera closed her eyes. And when she did, something impossible happened. Tears formed. But they were not liquid. They were light. Each one separated from her form and hovered in the air, small glowing fragments of memory, of emotion, of something far too personal to exist in a place like this. No one dared look at them directly. Because they understood instinctively. Those weren't just tears. They were moments. Fragments of a life. A child learning to speak. A voice laughing. A presence that had filled space that now felt empty. The Crimson Nebula, the Queen whispered. And the entire chamber reacted. Because now the truth was spoken. Not lost. Not missing. Taken. Everyone knew what lived there. Not an empire. Not a fleet. Something worse. The Void Reapers. Not conquerors. Not rulers. Predators. They did not negotiate. They did not expand territory. They simply existed in the one place where civilization could not follow. The nebula where advanced systems died. Where shields failed. Where navigation collapsed. Where entire fleets had entered and never returned. General Thorne spoke next, his voice heavy, grounded in the reality no one wanted to admit. We cannot send forces into that region. There was no hesitation in his tone. No apology. Just fact. Every system we rely on would fail within minutes. Weapons. Shields. Targeting. Even basic coordination would collapse. He looked directly at the Queen. We would be sending soldiers to die blindly. That was the moment. The exact moment the room shifted. Because for the first time, the truth was clear. This wasn't a war. Wars could be fought. This was something else. An impossible boundary. A place where power meant nothing. Queen Valara's light dimmed further. If we do nothing, she said softly, she dies. No one argued. Because that was also true. The silence that followed was unbearable. Not because they lacked options, but because they had run out of them. And then, a voice broke it. Quiet. Hesitant. Perhaps, there is one possibility. All eyes turned. Ambassador Krill again. But this time, something about her tone was different. Uncertain. Which was rare for her kind. Speak, Admiral Vex demanded. Krill hesitated. Not because she didn't know, but because she did. And she knew how it would sound. There is one species we have not consulted. A pause. Long enough to matter. Humans. For a fraction of a second. Nothing happened. Then, laughter. Sharp. Immediate. Disbelieving. The primitives. Vex barked. The species that still relies on mechanical systems and chemical propulsion. They are barely evolved beyond early expansion civilizations. Exactly, Krill said quietly. And that stopped everything. Because now the idea wasn't absurd. It was dangerous. Explain, the Queen said. Krill turned toward her. They do not rely on the systems that fail inside the nebula, she said. Their ships use analog controls. Mechanical redundancies. Non-quantum computation. She let the implications settle. They are inefficient. Another pause. But they might work. The chamber went silent again. Not the same silence as before. This one was sharper. More focused. Because suddenly, there was something. Not a solution. But a possibility. And sometimes, that was enough. Queen Valara's fading light flickered. Just slightly. Hope. Small. Fragile. But real. Bring me their representative, she said. And for the first time since she entered, the chamber moved. Captain Marcus Chen was asleep when the call came. Not the deep kind of sleep that forgets the world, but the light, fractured rest of someone who had trained his body to wake at the smallest shift in sound, pressure, or silence. The kind of sleep soldiers kept even when they were supposed to be safe. The alert cut through the quiet of his quarters with a single tone. Not urgent. Not panicked. Official. Which usually meant something worse. Chen opened his eyes immediately. No hesitation. No confusion. Just awareness returning like a switch had been flipped. The ceiling above him was plain alloy, scratched in places where time had done its slow work. Human design. Functional. Forgettable. He preferred it that way. The comm unit blinked again. Captain Marcus Chen, the station interface said, its voice neutral, you are requested at the Zephyrian Royal Chamber. Immediate attendance. Chen sat up slowly. The Zephyrian Royal Chamber did not request. It summoned. And it did not summon humans lightly. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and reached for his uniform. Simple blue. No medals displayed. No unnecessary markings. The kind of uniform that didn't try to impress anyone. He had worn better. He had buried people in better. By the time he stepped into the corridor, he was fully awake. The station around him was already alive. Not chaotic, not rushed, just moving with purpose. Alien forms passed him in quiet currents, each species carrying its own rhythm of motion, its own way of occupying space. Some glanced at him. Most didn't. Humans were still new enough to be noticed, but not important enough to matter. That suited him fine. The closer he moved toward the central sectors, the more that changed. Security increased. Conversations dropped. The architecture shifted from practical to deliberate. Curved walls, crystalline surfaces, light that seemed to respond to presence rather than physics. Power didn't need to be explained here. It was designed into everything. By the time he reached the entrance to the chamber, he was no longer being ignored. He was being measured. 2 Zephyrian guards stood at the threshold, their forms tall, elegant, their bodies glowing faintly with controlled energy. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One of them inclined its head slightly. Permission. Chen stepped forward. The doors parted. And for a brief moment, he understood why lesser minds would hesitate. The chamber was vast. Not just in size, but in presence. It felt like standing inside something that had been built to judge you. Every surface reflected light in ways that made depth hard to measure. Every figure inside it seemed larger than they actually were. Power concentrated into one place. And at the center of it, Queen Valera. Even dimmed, she dominated the room. Chen slowed slightly as he approached, not out of fear, but out of recognition. This wasn't a battlefield. This wasn't a negotiation table. This was something older. Something that required respect. He stopped at the designated distance and bowed his head just enough to acknowledge her position without surrendering his own. "Your Majesty," he said. His voice was steady. That mattered. Because every other being in the room was watching him now. Not out of curiosity. Out of disbelief. This was the human. The primitive. The last option. Queen Valera stepped down from her elevated position. The movement rippled through the chamber like a disturbance in still water. She wasn't supposed to descend. Not for anyone. But she did. Until she stood in front of him. Up close, the damage was clearer. Her light was unstable. Not weak. Strained. Like something holding itself together by force of will alone. "My daughter is missing," she said. No ceremony. No formal framing. Just truth. Chen nodded once. "I was informed. She was taken into the Crimson Nebula." That changed things. Not visibly. But inside his head, pieces shifted. He had heard of the nebula. Every human pilot had. It was one of those places that didn't care how advanced you were. One of those places where the universe reminded you that it didn't need your technology to end you. "Every fleet has failed to reach her," the Queen continued. "Every system we rely on becomes useless within that region." Chen didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. The silence let her continue. "I am told," she said, and now there was something under her voice, something raw, "that your species uses simpler systems." There it was. The word they always used. Simpler. A polite way of saying outdated. Inferior. Chen let out a quiet breath. "Sometimes," he said, "simple just means it still works when everything else breaks." A few of the observers shifted at that. Not agreement. Recognition. Queen Valera studied him. Not his rank. Not his uniform. Him. "You understand what I am asking," she said. It wasn't a question. Chen met her gaze. "I understand you want someone to go where your fleets can't. And bring back what cannot be reached." There it was again. Not just a mission. An impossibility. He had heard that tone before. Commanders using it when they ran out of options. Parents using it when they ran out of time. Behind the Queen, one of the alien admirals stepped forward. "You will be facing the Void Reapers," the massive figure said. "They are stronger than you. Faster. They kill without hesitation." Chen glanced at him, then back at the Queen. I've faced worse odds. The Admiral let out a harsh sound that might have been a laugh. This is not a battlefield, you understand, human. No, Chen said calmly. It's exactly the kind I understand. That drew more attention. Not because of what he said. Because of how easily he said it. Queen Valara's light shifted slightly. Not brighter, but steadier. You have lost someone, she said. Chen didn't react immediately. That was the only sign she needed. I had a daughter, he said after a moment. The chamber changed again. Not in sound. In weight. Everything became quieter. More focused. She died in the Proxima War, he continued, his tone flat, controlled. Evacuation convoy. Wrong place. Right time. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Anyone who had lived long enough understood what those words meant. The Queen's form flickered. Not with instability this time. With something else. Recognition. Then you understand, she said softly. Chen nodded once. Yes. A pause. Not long. But enough. I will need coordinates, he said. Last known transmission. Any data you have. That was it. No dramatic declaration. No promise of success. Just acceptance. The chamber reacted immediately. Voices rose. Objections formed. This is reckless. One human cannot. This is suicide. Chen ignored all of it. Because none of it mattered. Queen Valera raised her hand. Silence returned instantly. You will have everything you require, she said. Chen inclined his head. I'll also need a ship. That will be provided. He shook his head slightly. Not one of yours. That drew confusion. Even irritation. Our vessels are the most advanced in the galaxy, one of the generals snapped. That's the problem, Chen replied. He let that sit for a second. Everything advanced fails in the nebula, he continued. I need something that doesn't depend on systems that can fail that way. The Queen watched him closely. What do you require? Chen thought for a moment. Not long. He already knew. Something old, he said. Something mechanical. Something that doesn't care if the universe decides to stop cooperating. There was silence again. But this time, it wasn't doubt. It was realization. Because for the first time, they weren't thinking like superior beings anymore. They were thinking like survivors. Queen Valera stepped closer. Close enough that the faint light from her form touched him. If you do this, she said, there may be no return. Chen met her gaze. I know. And if you fail... He didn't let her finish. If I fail, he said quietly, then nothing changes. That was the truth. Brutal. Simple. Impossible to argue. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out. Her hand hovered near his shoulder before resting there lightly. Not as a ruler. As something else. Why? She asked. One word. But it carried everything. Why risk it? Why accept it? Why care? Chen's answer didn't take long. Because she's someone's daughter, he said. No hesitation. No performance. Just fact. And every daughter deserves a chance to come home. Something changed in the room at that moment. Not visibly, but permanently. Because every being present understood something they hadn't before. This wasn't strategy. This wasn't politics. This was something far more dangerous. This was human. Queen Valara's light flared. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to be seen. Then go, she said. And just like that. The most impossible mission in the galaxy began with one human who didn't think it was impossible at all. Because to him, it wasn't about winning. It was about trying. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. The ship they offered him could have ended wars. It rested in the hangar like a piece of living art, its crystalline hull flowing with soft light, engines silent but powerful enough to bend space itself. It was perfection. Precision engineered by a species that had spent centuries refining the idea of control. Captain Marcus Chun walked around it once. Then shook his head. I can't use this. The statement landed harder than expected. Behind him, the gathered Zephyrian engineers shifted in visible confusion. One of them stepped forward, its voice tight with disbelief. "This vessel represents the pinnacle of our technological achievement." Chen nodded. "I'm sure it does. Then why refuse it?" He turned, resting a hand briefly on the smooth surface of the ship before pulling it away. "Because it's going to die the second it enters the nebula." That quieted them. Not because they disagreed. Because they couldn't argue. Queen Valera stood nearby, watching him closely. "What do you need?" she asked. Chen didn't hesitate this time. Something that doesn't break when things stop making sense. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of confused discussions, reluctant approvals, and more than a few quiet arguments before someone finally understood what he meant. The human cargo bay. That's where they found it. The Starlight hauler didn't look like it belonged anywhere near the rest of the station. It sat low and heavy, its hull dull gray, dented in places where time had left its mark. There was nothing elegant about it. Nothing refined. It looked like it had survived things instead of avoiding them. Chen stopped in front of it and, for the first time since the mission began, smiled slightly. "Yeah," he murmured. "This'll do." Ambassador Sarah Martinez crossed her arms beside him, clearly not sharing his confidence. "Marcus, this thing is 40 years old." 42, Chen corrected. "That doesn't make it better." "It does to me." She exhaled slowly, glancing at the ship like it might fall apart if she stared too hard. "It doesn't even have a quantum navigation core." "Good. No energy shields." "Better. No automated targeting systems." "Perfect." She looked at him. Really looked at him. "You're serious?" Chen climbed the boarding ramp, running his hand along the worn metal as he went. "Everything on this ship works because someone made it work," he said. "Not because a system decided it should." He stepped inside. The difference was immediate. No glowing panels. No seamless interfaces. No silent intelligence guiding every function. Just switches. Dials. Levers. Things you could touch. Things you could fix. The air smelled faintly of oil and metal. Familiar. Honest. Chen settled into the pilot's chair and powered the systems on. The engines responded with a deep mechanical rumble that echoed through the hull. "Alive." "Navigation?" he asked. A voice answered from behind him. Magnetic compass, manual star charts, and short-range radar. He glanced back. Chief Engineer Rodriguez leaned against the doorway, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Fuel. Chemical. Old school. Burns hot, runs steady. Communications. Radio." Chen nodded once. "Good." Rodriguez tilted his head slightly. "You really think this relic's going to get you through that nebula?" Chen looked forward again, adjusting one of the analog dials until it clicked into place. "I think it's the only thing that might." 2 hours later, the hangar was quiet. Not empty. Just watching. Ships from multiple species hovered at a distance, their crews observing. Some out of curiosity. Others out of something closer to disbelief. One human. One outdated ship. Heading into a place entire fleets avoided. Queen Valera stood at the edge of the platform. Her light was still dim, but steadier now. Chen climbed down from the ramp for a final check. She approached him slowly. "I have something for you," she said. In her hand was a small crystal. It glowed softly, pulsing with a rhythm that felt alive. "This was created when my daughter was born," she said. "It carries a part of her essence." Chen took it carefully. It was warm. Not physically. Something deeper. "It will guide you," the Queen continued. "And if her life fades." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Chen nodded and secured it around his neck. "I'll bring her back," he said. Not a promise. A statement. Queen Valera studied him for a long moment. "I believe you will try," she said. That was enough. Chen turned and boarded the ship. The hatch sealed with a solid, mechanical sound. No silent transitions. No invisible systems. Just metal locking into place. He strapped in, ran through the startup sequence manually, and pushed the ignition. The engines roared. Not elegant, not quiet, but undeniable. The Starlight hauler lifted from the platform slowly, then accelerated, clearing the hangar and entering open space. Behind him, the station shrank. Ahead of him, the Crimson Nebula. Even from a distance, it didn't look real. It stretched across space like a wound in the universe, clouds of red and violet gas swirling in patterns that didn't quite follow natural laws. Lightning, if it could even be called that, flashed between the clouds, arcs of energy large enough to swallow ships whole. It was beautiful. In the same way a storm was beautiful right before it killed you. Chin leaned back slightly in his seat, one hand resting on the controls. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see what you've got." The first signs came at the edge. His radio dissolved into static. Not gradual. Immediate. One moment clear, the next gone. "Figures," he said, switching it off. The sensors flickered next. Digital systems failing, readings collapsing into meaningless noise. He didn't bother trying to fix them. He just reached for the compass. The needle wavered for a second. Then stabilized. Simple. Reliable. He adjusted his course manually, cross-checking with the star chart spread across the console. Paper. Actual paper. Something no energy field could corrupt. The ship shuddered as it crossed the boundary. Lights dimmed. Systems protested. Then stabilized. Chen exhaled slowly. So far so good. Deeper inside, the nebula became something else entirely. Visibility dropped. The glowing clouds thickened, turning space into a shifting maze of color and shadow. Lightning arced unpredictably, illuminating shapes that vanished just as quickly. It wasn't just dangerous. It was disorienting. Designed to make you lost. Chin didn't fight it. He let the ship move with it, adjusting course in small increments, trusting instinct more than instruments. The crystal around his neck pulsed faintly. He noticed. Didn't question it. Just followed. Hours passed. Or maybe it was less. Time felt strange here. Then he saw it. At first, just a shape. An outline against the shifting clouds. An asteroid. Large. But wrong. Chen cut the engines immediately. The ship drifted silently as he reached for a pair of old optical binoculars. He raised them slowly. Focused. And there it was. Not an asteroid. A fortress. Metal structures carved into the rock. Docking bays hidden within its surface. Lights flickering in patterns that suggested life. Activity. Movement. Void reapers. Chen lowered the binoculars slightly, studying the formation. "Well," he murmured, "found you." He didn't rush. Didn't move closer. He waited. Watched. Patterns always existed. You just had to be patient enough to see them. Guard rotations. Ship movements. Light changes. Everything repeated. Everything predictable. 2 hours later, he had what he needed. There was a secondary port. Small. Unmonitored. Used for waste disposal. Perfect. Chen powered the ship down completely and let it drift behind a cluster of debris, hidden from direct view. Then he stood. No hesitation. No second guessing. He grabbed his suit. Old design. Heavy. Reliable. Exactly what he needed. As he sealed the helmet and checked the oxygen flow, the crystal at his neck pulsed again. Stronger this time. Closer. "She's in there," he said quietly. Then he opened the airlock. The void rushed in. Cold. Silent. Unforgiving. Chen stepped out into it without hesitation, and began drifting toward the enemy stronghold. Alone. Unseen. And exactly where he needed to be. The void did not welcome him. It never did. Chen drifted in silence, using short, controlled bursts from his suit thrusters to guide his path. Every movement was deliberate. Every adjustment calculated. In a place like this, momentum wasn't just physics. It was survival. The asteroid fortress loomed larger with every passing second. Up close, it was worse. What had looked like structure from a distance now revealed itself as something closer to infection. Metal fused into rock in uneven layers, like the base had grown instead of being built. Jagged edges, exposed plating, crude extensions bolted onto ancient stone. Nothing clean. Nothing precise. But functional. Dangerously functional. The waste port sat along the darker side of the asteroid, half hidden by shadow and debris. No lights. No guards. No visible sensors. Because no one sane would come in this way. Chen angled toward it slowly, reducing his velocity until he was barely moving at all. He let himself drift the last few meters, reaching out only at the final moment to catch the edge of the hatch. The metal was rough under his glove. Used. Ignored. Perfect. He attached a magnetic clamp from his belt, securing himself in place before working the external latch. It resisted at first, then gave. A soft mechanical shift echoed through the metal as the seal broke. Chen waited. Counted. Nothing. He pulled the hatch open just enough to slip through, then sealed it behind him. Darkness swallowed him immediately. No welcoming lights. No automated systems detecting intrusion. Just a narrow chamber filled with a faint smell of decay and fuel. He cycled his suit to internal oxygen and removed his helmet slowly. The air was breathable. Barely. Good enough. He moved. The corridor beyond the port was rough cut, carved directly through the asteroid and reinforced with scrap metal plating. The lighting was inconsistent, flickering strips casting long, shifting shadows across the walls. Perfect cover. Voices echoed faintly somewhere deeper inside. Harsh. Unrefined. Confident. Void Reapers. Chen slowed his breathing. Adjusted his posture. Lowered his center of gravity just slightly. Everything about him shifted from traveler to hunter. He moved through the corridors like he had done 100 times before in 100 different places. Step where the ground won't echo. Pause where shadows break your outline. Move only when attention is elsewhere. The Reapers were big. Loud. Uncareful. They didn't expect threats here. That was their first mistake. It took him 15 minutes to find the holding area. Not because it was hidden. Because he took the time to be sure. The prison block opened into a larger chamber carved into a circular shape. Cells lined the walls, sealed with crude mechanical bars. Guards stood at 2 main exits, their massive forms relaxed but alert enough to respond if needed. About a dozen of them. Armed. Strong. Confident. Chen stayed in the shadows, observing. Counting. Mapping. Always mapping. Then he saw her. Third cell from the left. Smaller than he expected. Her crystalline skin dimmed, its usual brilliance reduced to a faint, uneven glow. Her posture was controlled, but the exhaustion showed in the way she held herself. But her eyes were still sharp. Still fighting. Good, Chen whispered under his breath. He moved closer. Slow. Silent. He stopped just outside the edge of the light and spoke quietly. Princess. Her head snapped up immediately. For a second, her expression was pure instinct, alert, defensive, ready. Then confusion. Because what she saw didn't make sense. A human. In a place like this. How did... she started, then stopped herself. Quiet, Chen said calmly. He stepped just enough into the light for her to see his face. My name is Marcus Chen. Your mother sent me. The change in her expression was immediate. Not disbelief. Recognition. Not of him. Of what that meant. Human, she whispered. But... later, he said. Can you move? She stood carefully. I'm not injured. Good. He glanced around the chamber briefly. Then back at her. How many? She didn't hesitate. 47 total. Different species. Some have been here longer than me. Chen exhaled slowly. That complicated things. He had come for one. Now there were 47. He could leave. Complete the mission. Get her out. No one would question it. No one would blame him. He looked at the other cells. Different shapes. Different forms. Different kinds of fear. All watching him. Waiting. Not expecting. But hoping. Chen made the decision. Fast. Final. All right, he said quietly. "We're taking everyone." The princess blinked. "That's not possible." "Yeah," Chen replied. "That's what they keep saying." He stepped back into the shadows. "Listen carefully," he continued. "When this starts, it's going to get loud. It's going to get messy. Your job is simple." She nodded. "Get them out," he said. "Don't stop. Don't wait. Don't come back for me." "What are you going to do?" she asked. Chen checked his gear. A basic projectile pistol. Limited ammunition. 2 small charges. A blade. Nothing impressive. Everything reliable. "I'm going to make them look the wrong way." He moved toward the center of the chamber. Then stopped. Took one breath. Then stepped fully into the light. "Hey!" he called out, his voice cutting clean through the space. The reaction was immediate. Heads turned. Weapons lifted. Laughter followed. A deep, grinding sound from creatures that didn't see a threat. Just a mistake. One of the larger Reapers stepped forward, easily towering over Chen, its scarred form radiating confidence. "A human," it growled. "You came all this way to die." Chen shrugged slightly. "Something like that." The Reaper raised its weapon. That was the moment. Chen moved. Faster than they expected. The first shot hit before the Reaper could adjust, forcing it back. Chen was already rolling, sliding behind a support column as return fire tore through the space where he had been standing. Noise exploded through the chamber. Shouting. Weapons firing. Chaos. Exactly what he needed. He fired again, not aiming to kill, but to control movement. Force them to react. Force them to cluster. Predictable. Always predictable. One of the guards charged him directly, massive and fast. Chen let it. Then sidestepped at the last second, driving his blade into the back of its knee joint. The creature roared as it collapsed, its own momentum taking it down hard. Big. Strong. Slow. He kept moving. Never staying in one place. Never giving them a clear target. Behind him, he heard it. Metal snapping. Cells opening. Movement. The prisoners. Good. He triggered the first charge. The explosion wasn't large. It didn't need to be. The ceiling section collapsed just enough to split the chamber, separating the guards into 2 groups. Confusion spread instantly. Lines of sight broken. Coordination gone. Chen pushed forward, drawing more attention, firing controlled bursts, forcing the Reapers to focus entirely on him. "Over here," he called, stepping into the open again. Another rush. Another mistake. He moved through them, not overpowering, not matching strength, just redirecting it. Using the environment. Using their size against them. Everything they had. He turned into a weakness. One by one, they fell back. Not defeated. Disrupted. Uncertain. That was enough. "Move!" Chen shouted toward the prisoners. They did. The princess at the front, guiding them, pushing them forward through the corridor. Chen stayed behind just long enough. Long enough to make sure they had space. Then he turned, and found himself face to face with the largest of them. The scarred one. The leader. It blocked the exit, weapon raised, eyes locked onto him. "You fight well," it growled. "For something so small." Chen adjusted his grip slightly. "Yeah," he said. "I get that a lot." The Reaper swung. Fast. Heavy. Enough to crush bone. Chen dropped low, rolling under the strike, coming up behind it. One quick movement, precise, targeting the same weakness. The back of the knee. The creature staggered. Not down. But enough. Chen didn't wait. He shoved forward, using the momentum to push past it, breaking through the corridor and sprinting after the others. Behind him, the Reapers roared. But they didn't follow. Not immediately. Because for the first time, they weren't certain they could win. And that hesitation, that moment of doubt, was all Chen needed. He caught up to the group near the docking area. Ships lined the bay. Crude. Functional. Perfect. "We're taking those," he said. The princess didn't argue. Didn't question. She just nodded. Because at this point, impossible had already happened, and they were still alive. Which meant one thing. The human wasn't finished yet. The ships were not meant for mercy. They were built for raiding. Fast, brutal, efficient. Metal plates welded without care for symmetry, interiors stripped to the bare minimum needed to move, fight, and carry whatever, or whoever, was taken. Now they carried something the Void Reapers had never planned for. 47 survivors. And one human who refused to leave anyone behind. Chen moved through the docking bay quickly, directing without raising his voice. You, take that one. If you can fly, you're flying. If you can't, stay out of the pilot's way. There was hesitation. Of course there was. Different species. Different instincts. Some of them had been enemies before they were prisoners. Fear didn't just disappear because a door opened. It changed shape. Listen to him, Princess Lisa said, her voice cutting through the noise. He got us this far. That was enough. Not complete trust, but enough to move. Engines coughed to life one by one, crude ignition systems roaring louder than anything in civilized space. The sound filled the bay with something raw and mechanical. Alive. Chen climbed into the lead ship, hands already moving across unfamiliar controls. Different layout. Same principles. Fuel. Ignition. Thrust. Everything else was just variation. Form up behind me, he said into the radio. Stay close. No hero moves. Static answered him. Then voices. Unsteady, but listening. The ships lifted. Not cleanly. Not gracefully. But they lifted. The docking bay doors tore open as they forced their way out into the nebula, engines burning hard as the red storm swallowed them whole. Behind them, movement. Reaper ships. Not many, but enough. They're coming, one of the voices said, panic rising. Yeah, Chen replied calmly. They would. He pushed the throttle forward slightly. Not full. Not yet. Stay tight, he repeated. The nebula didn't care about pursuit. It attacked everything equally. Lightning arced across the void, energy storms forming without pattern, tearing through space like living things. Visibility dropped, rose, then dropped again. Perfect hunting ground. For both sides. The first raider ship came in fast from the left, weapons firing blindly through the clouds. The shots missed. Not because of luck. Because Chen wasn't where they expected. He angled his ship slightly, letting the storm swallow his heat signature just enough to break their tracking. Don't fight them, he said. Let the nebula do it. Another burst of energy flashed across space, striking too close for comfort. One of the trailing ships veered off, its engine sputtering. Stay in formation, Chen snapped. We're hit. You're not dead. Stay in formation. There was something in his voice. Not anger. Authority. Earned. The ship corrected its course. Held. Good. The Reapers pressed closer. Aggressive. Confident. They had the advantage. Numbers. Familiar territory. But they were still thinking like hunters. Not survivors. Chen guided the convoy deeper into the thicker clouds, where visibility dropped to almost nothing. Dangerous. Unpredictable. Exactly where he wanted to be. Cut speed, he ordered suddenly. Confusion answered him. If we slow down, they'll catch us. They're already catching us, Chen replied. Trust me. One by one, the ships reduced speed. The formation tightened. Behind them, the Reapers surged forward. Right into the storm. Lightning erupted. A massive arc of energy tore across space, catching the lead raider ship full across its hull. The explosion lit the nebula in a flash of white and red before vanishing just as quickly. The others scattered. Too late. Two more ships clipped the edge of the storm, their systems failing instantly, drifting uncontrolled into the clouds. Chen didn't look back. Keep moving. The pursuit broke. Not ended. But enough. For now. Minutes passed. Or maybe longer. Time didn't behave normally here. Then, Captain, Lisa's voice came through, strained. We have a problem. Chen didn't like that tone. Say it. Ship 2, They're fighting. Of course they were. Fear had a way of dragging old wounds to the surface. What kind of fighting? Bad. Corax and Volany. There. The transmission cut for a second, replaced by shouting. Harsh, overlapping voices filled the channel, the translator struggling to keep up. Chen closed his eyes briefly, then switched frequencies. "This is Chen," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone shut up. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The noise dropped. Not gone, but reduced. "Enough. You want to kill each other," he continued. "Do it later. Right now, we're all stuck in the same situation." No response. Good. They were listening. "The nebula is trying to kill us," he said. "The Reapers are still out there. And none of you are getting home alone." A pause. Then one voice. Angry. "But they—" "I don't care what they did," Chen cut in. "Not right now." Silence again. Tighter this time. "You want revenge," he said. "Survive first." That landed. Because survival. Survival was universal. "They're not your enemies right now," he continued. "They're the reason you might make it out of here." The channel stayed quiet. Then, slowly, "Understood," someone said. Not agreement. Acceptance. That was enough. Chen switched back to the main frequency. "Princess," he said, "take navigation for a minute." "Got it," she replied. He stood, grabbing a toolkit from the side panel. "I'm going to check on them." "Marcus, I'll be back." He moved through the narrow corridors of the ship quickly, stepping into the connected transport link between vessels. The inside of Ship 2 was worse than he expected. Tight. Overcrowded. Tension thick enough to feel. Two groups faced each other across the narrow space, bodies coiled, ready to break again. Chen stepped between them. No weapon raised. No threat. Just presence. "Anyone throws the first hit," he said calmly, "and I throw them out the airlock." They stared at him. Different species. Different instincts. Same reaction. Pause. Because something about him made them believe it. Not because he was stronger. Because he meant it. Slowly, the tension eased. Not gone, but controlled. Chen nodded once. "Good," he said. "Now sit down and help each other stay alive." He turned and moved back to the cockpit. No more words needed. When he returned, the princess glanced at him. "It's quiet now," she said. "It'll hold," he replied. "For a while, at least." The ships continued forward. Slower now. More careful. Working together instead of just moving. And that's when the next problem hit. "Captain," another voice called out, sharp with panic. "Ship 3 is losing power." Chen checked his readings. Sure enough, one of the ships was falling behind, its engine output dropping fast. "We can't maintain speed," the pilot said. "We're going to lose thrust completely." Chen's hand tightened slightly on the controls. Options ran through his head. Fast. Leave them. Save the rest. Mission success. Logical. Efficient. Wrong. "All ships slow down," he said. The reaction was immediate. "What?" "No, if we slow. We stay together," Chen said. No hesitation. No debate. Behind him, the princess spoke quietly. "If we wait, the Reapers could catch us." Chen didn't look at her. "And if we don't," he said, "those 12 die." That was the difference. Not strategy. Not efficiency. Choice. The convoy slowed. Chen guided them into a denser cloud formation, using the nebula itself as cover while he coordinated repairs. "Talk me through your systems," he said to the pilot of the failing ship. The next hour was controlled chaos. Instructions shouted. Parts moved. Improvised solutions built from whatever they had. Different species. Different knowledge. Working together. Because now they had to. And slowly, the engine came back. Weak. But alive. "Powers stabilizing," the pilot reported. A breath released across every channel. They were still in it. Still moving. Still alive. And something had changed. The tension didn't come back. Not the same way. Instead, voices started again. Not shouting. Talking. Stories. Names. Fragments of lives shared in the dark between stars. Chen listened without commenting. Because this was the real mission. Not just getting them out. Making sure they didn't go back the same. Hours later, the nebula began to thin. The red clouds pulling back just enough to reveal something beyond. Clear space. Almost there. Then, a sound. Soft. Wrong. Chen turned. The princess was on the floor. Her light flickering violently, patterns breaking apart across her crystalline skin. He was at her side instantly. What happened? An alien medic pushed forward, scanning her with a handheld device. The nebula, the medic said urgently. It's affecting her biology. She's collapsing. The crystal around Chen's neck dimmed. Not completely, but enough. How long? He asked. Not long, the medic replied. Not enough. Chen reached for his kit. Pulled out a small injector. Human issue. Standard. Safe. For humans. Wait, the medic said sharply. You don't know how that will affect her. It could kill her instantly. Chen looked down at her. At the fading light. Then back at the injector. If we do nothing, he said, she dies anyway. The medic didn't argue. Couldn't. Chen leaned closer. Princess, he said quietly. This might help. Or it might not. Her eyes opened slightly. Focused on him. No fear. Just trust. I know, she whispered. That was enough. Chen injected the dose. And waited. Seconds stretched. Too long. The flickering didn't stop. Didn't slow. For a moment, he thought he had made the wrong call. Then, the light changed. Subtle. Then stronger. The patterns stabilized. The glow returned. Not fully. But enough. The crystal around his neck flared bright. She's stabilizing, the medic said, disbelief clear in their voice. Chen exhaled slowly. Good. The princess's eyes opened again. Stronger this time. You didn't hesitate, she said softly. Chen shook his head. No time to. She smiled faintly. That's very human. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because ahead. The nebula finally broke. And beyond it, home. The storm ended without warning. One moment, the universe was red and violent, filled with lightning and shifting shadows that swallowed everything whole. The next, it was gone. Clear space stretched out in front of them, silent and vast, stars burning steady and calm as if nothing had ever been wrong. For a second, no one spoke. Not over the radio. Not inside the ships. Because after surviving something like that, silence felt unreal. Chen kept his hands steady on the controls, guiding the lead ship forward slowly as instruments began to stabilize again. Systems flickered back to life one by one. Signals returned. Readings made sense again. Order. After chaos. Captain, Lisa said quietly beside him. He didn't answer right away. He was looking ahead. At first, it was just shapes. Reflections against starlight. Then, it resolved. Ships. Hundreds of them. Formed in perfect alignment across the edge of the nebula like a wall of light waiting at the border of a nightmare. Different designs. Different structures. Different species. But all there for the same reason. Waiting. For us, Lisa whispered. Chen nodded once. Looks like it. The radio crackled to life. Not static this time. Clear. Strong. Rescue convoy, a voice came through, controlled but tight with something barely held together. This is Admiral Vex of the Zephyrian fleet. Identify yourselves. Chen reached forward, flipping the switch. This is Captain Marcus Chen, he said. Convoy intact. 47 survivors accounted for. A pause. Just a second. Then the channel exploded. Cheers. Voices overlapping from multiple species, different tones, different languages, all translated into one shared moment of pure relief. It hit harder than anything in the nebula. Because this This meant they made it. Captain Chen, another voice cut through. Not controlled. Not distant. Personal. Queen Valera. Is my daughter alive? Chen glanced at Lisa. She was already reaching for the transmitter. Mom, she said, her voice breaking despite everything she had endured. It's me. The silence that followed lasted less than a second. But it carried the weight of everything. My daughter, the Queen whispered, and for the first time since he had met her, there was no control in her voice at all. You're alive. I'm coming home, Lisa said, tears of light forming again, brighter now, stronger. Chen looked away slightly. Gave them that moment. Because some things didn't need witnesses. The fleet moved. Not aggressively. Not defensively. They opened. Making space. Guiding the convoy inward like a tide, pulling something precious back to shore. As the ships entered formation, Chen finally let himself breathe fully. Not relief. Not yet. Just release. The mission wasn't over. Not until it ended. The docking process was slow. Careful. Every ship damaged in some way, every system pushed beyond what it was designed to handle. But they made it. One by one. The airlock hissed open. The moment stretched. Then Princess Lisa stepped through. And the universe seemed to hold its breath. Queen Valera was already there. Waiting. Not as a ruler. Not as a symbol. Just a mother. For a fraction of a second, they stood apart. Looking at each other. Making sure it was real. Then they moved. Lisa crossed the distance in seconds, crashing into her mother's arms with a force that broke whatever composure either of them had left. The Queen's light exploded outward. Not dim. Not fractured. Brilliant. Gold. Pure. The entire hangar filled with it, reflections scattering across metal and glass, turning the space into something almost sacred. They held each other tightly. No words at first. None needed. Every being present understood exactly what they were seeing. Something that existed beyond species. Beyond power. Beyond everything. Family. Chen stayed near the back. Where he preferred to be. Watching. Quiet. The other survivors began to emerge from the ships, and the scene repeated itself over and over again across the hangar. Reunions. Different forms. Different ways of expressing it. But the same emotion. Relief. Gratitude. Home. And something else. Something new. The Korax and the Volani stepped out side by side. Not fighting. Not glaring. Talking. Quietly. Like whatever had existed between them before had been left somewhere back in the nebula. Chen noticed. Didn't comment. He didn't need to. Queen Valera finally pulled back, her hands still on her daughter's shoulders as if letting go completely wasn't an option anymore. You're safe, she whispered. I am, Lisa said, then turned slightly. Because of him. Every eye in the hangar shifted. Toward Chen. He didn't move. Didn't step forward. Didn't try to leave. He just stood there. Because there was nowhere else to be. Queen Valera approached him slowly. Her light had changed. No longer unstable. No longer fading. Stronger than before. Not because the danger was gone. Because something had been restored. She stopped in front of him. Close. Closer than any ruler should stand to anyone outside their own kind. How can I repay you? She asked. Chen shook his head slightly. You don't need to. That is not how this works, she said. It is for me. A faint shift in her expression. Not confusion. Understanding. You brought my daughter home, she said. When entire fleets could not even reach her. Chen glanced past her briefly. At the survivors. At the families. I didn't just bring her, he said. The princess stepped forward immediately. He saved all of us, she said. And when I was dying, he risked everything to save me. That drew a reaction. Stronger than anything before. Because now it wasn't just about success. It was about choice. Queen Valera studied him again. Deeper this time. You risked your life, she said. Chen shrugged slightly. They needed help. Strangers. He met her gaze. They're people. That was it. No elaboration. No justification. Just truth. Around them, the atmosphere shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. But permanent. Because something had changed in how they saw him. Not as a human. As something else. Ambassador Krill stepped forward, her voice softer than before. "You have shown us something we had forgotten," she said. Chen raised an eyebrow slightly. "What's that?" "That compassion is not weakness," she replied. "That helping without gain is not inefficiency." Admiral Vex followed, his posture different now. "Respect. Real respect." "I was wrong," he said plainly. "I thought your kind was primitive." Chen allowed himself a small smile. "We are." Vex paused, then nodded once. "Then perhaps," he said, "we have much to learn from primitive thinking." A low ripple of agreement moved through the gathered crowd. Not forced. Not polite. Genuine. Queen Valera raised her hand slightly. Silence returned. "Captain Marcus Chen," she said, her voice carrying across the entire hangar. "By the authority of the Zephyrian crown, I name you and all of humanity as family to our people." The words settled into the air like something physical. Ancient. Powerful. Final. "This is the highest honor we can give," she continued. Chen didn't react immediately, because he understood what that meant. Not politically. Personally. Family. He nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said. "Simple. Enough." The princess stepped forward again and, without hesitation, wrapped her arms around him. "Uncle Marcus," she said softly. The term translated instantly. Not literal. Something closer. Someone trusted. Someone who belonged. Chen hesitated for a fraction of a second, then returned the gesture. Awkward. Brief. But real. When she stepped back, he looked around the hangar one more time. At the different species. Standing together. Not as allies. Not as rivals. Just together. "You know what the best part is?" Lisa said quietly. Chen glanced at her. "What?" "This doesn't end here," she said. "They're going to remember this." He followed her gaze. The Korax. The Volani. The others. Talking. Sharing. Something new forming where something old had been. "Yeah," Chen said. "They will." Queen Valera stepped beside him one last time, holding a small object in her hand. A crystal sculpture. It depicted a single human figure standing in front of a group of different alien forms. Protective. Steady. Unmoving. "This will be placed in our Hall of Heroes," she said. "So that this moment is never forgotten." Chen took it carefully. Looked at it for a second. Then back at her. "I hope they remember something else too," he said. "What is that?" He glanced around the room again. "At every face. Every form. Every life matters," he said. "That's it. No speech. No grand message. Just that. And somehow, that was enough to echo louder than anything else said that day. Because in a galaxy built on power, one human had proven something stronger. Not strength. Not technology. Not dominance. But something far more dangerous. Care. And sometimes, that was what changed everything.